Okay. Okay, so the songs that we are analyzing are The Creation by Franz Joseph Haydn and Paradise Lost by Symphony X. And in both pieces, instead of using Paradise Lost as a whole, both pieces, instead of using Paradise Lost as a whole, focus on a certain element of Paradise Lost while excluding other elements.
Okay, so I'm going to start out by giving some background information about Paradise Lost, or about The Creation by Haydn. This is a quote that I found that I thought was very interesting and representative of the kind of impact that The Creation has had. It says that in the moment when light broke forth for the first time, one could have said that light rays darted from the composer's blazing eyes. The enchantment of the electrified Viennese was so profound that the performance could not continue for several minutes. And that was said by a guest at the first performance of The Creation when it was performed in 1798. So The Creation, as we said, was composed by Franz Joseph Haydn in 1797. Haydn was a highly influential Austrian composer during the classical period. In fact, Vienna became known as the music capital of the world, while Haydn and Mozart were composers there. The Creation is an oratorio, which is a large-scale narrative music form. It's about 2 hours long, and it tells a story. So it's very similar to an opera in that way, and in its structure, but unlike an opera, it doesn't have props or scenery or things like that, and it has a much larger focus on the music than on the lyrics. And oratorios are usually about a religious subject. So for a little bit more specific historical context, The Creation was composed during the Enlightenment, which occurred primarily in Europe during the 18th and 19th centuries and was characterized by extreme shifts in thought regarding reason, science, religion, and politics. The Enlightenment began with major scientific revolutions in the 16th and 17th centuries that were able to explain the world independently from theological constraints. So that led to a huge change in thought that encouraged challenges to traditional authority and led to the creation of societies based more on principles of reason and human rights. Several Enlightenment ideals are present in The Creation, which we'll give more specific examples of later. But in general, Haydn tends to take away the focus on the negative aspects of Paradise Lost, such as the fall, sin, punishment, guilt, etc., and focuses much more on the power of man, which really represents the move from theological dependence towards region and autonomy during this time. Also, light is a very significant symbol in The Creation, as well as of the Enlightenment. In the beginning of the piece, Haydn talks about how when God creates the earth out of chaos, and he particularly focuses on the theme of light, and several sections of the section of the piece refer to light in their titles. And so the theme of light is also representative of the Enlightenment. It's in the word enlightenment itself, and it really represents the new awareness and knowledge that people were gaining at the time. And as we know, this connects to Paradise Lost as well, because Milton has a theme of light throughout. So this is really representative of the influence that Paradise Lost has on The Creation. This time period in music was the classical period, which took place from the mid-1700s to the mid-1800s. So it was preceded by the Baroque period and followed by the Romantic periods. And the main characteristics of this period are that it had a very structured and formal style, which can probably be largely attributed to the focus on logic and order during the Enlightenment and during this time. The classical period also saw an increase in the size of orchestras and the beginning of large-scale works, such as this oratorio. And specifically, Haydn's music was known for having rich orchestration, where he was able to create very powerful sounds with few instruments, and he was also very influential in the expansion of the standard size of an orchestra during this time. And Haydn was also known for his ability to create impactful and expressive harmonies and tonalities with his works. The Creation was highly influenced by two other oratorios, The Messiah and Israel in Egypt, both of which were written by Baroque composer Handel. So Haydn heard these pieces performed and was inspired to write a similar piece, also on a religious subject. It's also important to note that Haydn did not write the libretto, which is like the text or lyrics to an oratorio. So he was given the libretto by someone else and set it to music. It's not known for sure who wrote the libretto. It's thought to be someone named Lindley or Lidley, but nothing is known for certain. And the libretto is a very common topic among scholarly sources and is highly criticized. It was based on the Bible and Milton, as well as whoever wrote it, like his own opinions. And it may have even been offered to Handel, but refused by him. It was also supposedly improved by being translated to German and then back into English, but some people are still very critical of the final English translation for not being idiomatic. Therefore, the libretto is often slightly changed during performances depending on the composer's desire. But despite the condemnation, the libretto is made up by Haydn's music, and the creation clearly still remains an impactful piece more than 2 centuries after having been written.
So, there are a few movements that are heavily based on Paradise Lost. The entire piece is about 34 movements, but I'll only focus on 6, 7. So, just a little bit of background onto how the actual music is formatted. Each singer, and this is an opera, so each singer is a different angel. The soprano is Gabriel, the tenor is Uriel, and the bass is Raphael. And this piece is far from a tragedy. Because of the Enlightenment, there is hardly any emphasis on the fall of Satan or the fall of man, but it mostly focuses on the love between Adam and Eve and the creation of the world. So the prelude, the representation of chaos, this movement, Haydn omits the resolution to many phrases in the movement to represent chaos. The music seems almost confusing. Without resolution, there is no end, and similarly, chaos rules over the realm of confusion just outside the gates of hell. This movement has no particular mood to it. It is in C minor, so it does suggest that there is kind of a darker tone to it. However, a lot of major themes can be heard. This could suggest that since the heavens and earth rose out of chaos, chaos encompasses everything. In the second movement, Now Vanished by the Holy Beams, this short movement tells a story of the fall of Satan and his angels. The musical theme can be heard as triumphant because of the victory of heaven, which kind of reflects the ideas of the Enlightenment without really focusing on the fall. However, there can be sections that are heard as brooding, describing the fall of Satan and describing their new home in hell. And there possibly might be an excerpt here. In the second movement, Now Heaven in Fullest Glory Shone, this is a precursor to the creation of man. Raphael sings about how the creation of man is needed to complete his work. And this movement can be heard as rich and full, sung by the bass, so it's very regal. And this movement really celebrates the importance of man and the ideals of the Enlightenment, because man's creation is really being celebrated as the most important part of the story of the Old Testament. In movement 24, In Native Worth and Honor Clad, this is one of the most famous movements in the creation, and this movement highlights the creation of man and woman. Adam and Eve are shown as virtuous and upstanding in this movement, and it can be heard through Uriel's beautiful and vivid descriptions. This is a very lyrical movement. Lots of rich orchestration can be heard in this movement, and it just shows how celebrated man is in this piece. The movement 32, Graceful Consort, is a love duet between Adam and Eve. And why this is important and related to Paradise Lost is the emphasis on the love between Adam and Eve. This movement is back and forth between Adam and Eve, and it's very upbeat, lively, and full of spirit. And then the final movement I want to analyze today is movement number 33. O happy pair and ever happy henceforth. This movement hardly focuses on the fall of man. It's only a 25-second movement. This encompasses the entirety of the fall of man, which is contained in only one line, O happy pair, and always happy yet, if not misled by false conceit, yet strive at more as granted is, and more to know, as know ye should. This is sung in a recitative secco, which is a free rhythm that's dictated by the accent of words. And now it is Symphony X.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about Symphony X. Symphony X is a heavy metal band. So we want to first talk about what is heavy metal and define the genre. So heavy metal is a genre of music, and Dina Weinstein defines music in general as having a set of codes. And these codes are based around the sonic, the visual, and the verbal dimensions of music. So we're going to talk about those three things in the context of heavy metal. So the sonic, the visual, and the verbal aspects of heavy metal all point back to this idea of power and intensity that is really important in heavy metal. And the culture of heavy metal really stresses self-empowerment, emancipation, and resistance. So the sonic aspect of heavy metal is based around loud music with like electric guitar, long solos, and especially the power chord. So we're going to play part of Symphony X. This is their second song, Set the World on Fire, The Lie of Lies. So that's kind of a taste of what heavy metal is like. Really loud, very intense music, very kind of in-your-face vibe from this type of music. So the visual, this covers anything from the album art to the artist's look to their stage presence, how they run their production, anything that you're going to see from that artist. And especially in heavy metal, it's all based around power and being extravagant, being really out there. So these are 4 of Symphony X's album art pieces, and the one on the far left is Iconoclast. This one is, I cannot remember the name. This one's Paradise Lost, and this one's Underworld. And so they all kind of have a very intense, dark, kind of creepy vibe. And this one, it's Live on the Edge of Forever. You can see the band playing on stage. And really the takeaway is they have like a lot of lights, like a large production. And then the last element of music is the verbal element, and the verbal element is pretty much lyrics and the lyrical aspect of music and how lyrics provide meaning for an artist for their work. And heavy metal lyrics are mostly about like sex, power, or something controversial, and even the band names have meaning. So Black Sabbath is invoking
like dark tones of like something that's religious. So oftentimes bands will use that kind of language to describe like power and intensity. So the history of heavy metal goes back to the 1960s. And heavy metal is basically an offshoot of what we would call rock and roll. And it really splintered off because it has a more like grungy, edgy sound, and it's really loud, so it's really different from what you would think of as typical rock and roll. And the reason that it has that sort of sound is because heavy metal artists really focus on like political, social issues. Their music is a lot more controversial, especially in the topics that they talk about. And it was born out of this era of the 60s where there's a lot of like political turmoil and things like that. Movements like free love and like drugs were really important socially, and the Vietnam War and things like that. So heavy metal artists talk about those kind of things in their songs. And the first heavy metal artists typically that are cited are Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. So that gives kind of an idea of what types of artists that you would know come out of this era. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is heavy metal and Paradise Lost and how those two go together. So heavy metal really focuses on the satanic, which is important for Paradise Lost because Satan is a character. And so in heavy metal, much like Paradise Lost, they use Satan to kind of contrast with God and to portray God as someone who's not this typical way that society views God. It's not a God who has everyone's best interest at heart. And they often portray Satan as like a rebellious character, which reflects how like oftentimes heavy metal artists see themselves. And band names often evoke the satanic. And they also evoke like dangerous or unpleasant like people, animals, anything like that is countercultural really. And they also really focus on power and freedom. And there's a quote by Walser, and it's the names chosen by heavy metal bands evoke power and intensity. So everything that a metal band does really is about power and what power means and like how to gain power. And they kind of gain power through their music, even within like the use of the power chord as a way to create music. Points back to that. And heavy metal really is about the individual and asserting freedom in a society that metal artists believe like constrain them. And people who listen to heavy metal also believe that and like portray that in the way they listen to music and the way that they act and do things like within the context of metal culture. Yeah.
Here's another laptop. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so the analysis of Symphony X Paradise Lost album as a whole is a really important idea is that the album was not created as a concept album, like in the sense that they were telling the story of what Milton was writing about in Paradise Lost, but they're instead it was created to present themes in Paradise Lost, such as failure, falling, sin, good versus evil, God, all things that are present in Milton's Paradise Lost. And Symphony X chose to create the album portraying Paradise Lost because through the music that Lauren just talked about, the way that they represent, heavy metal can represent being oppressed or portraying power, Symphony X really felt they would be able to do that in this type of music. And they took a man versus machine approach, as they said in an interview, meaning it was really like feeling like they were against the world and feeling oppressed. And yeah, they've taken similar approaches on other albums. An example is The Odyssey, which was based off of the epic poem The Odyssey. And so the lyrics are, the album begins with lyrics that are more specific in describing events, specific events, and then it progresses to more general ideas talking about themes that occur in Paradise Lost. And of the 10 tracks on the album, 6 of the songs are based on books 1, 2, 9, and 10. And so these are the songs that are based on those books. And so tracks 2 and 3 are based on books 1 and 2 from Paradise Lost. The lyrics are both written from Satan's perspective. The subject is Satan ruling in hell as he leads the fallen angels, and they emphasize power and superiority that Satan demands among himself in books 1 and 2. And, and then track 2 is Set the World on Fire, The Lie of Lies, which is what we heard a second ago. Lyrics that appear several times are Master of Sin, Two-Faced Snake, the words wings, fire, falling. Master of Sin and Two-Faced Snake are definitely talking about Satan, could be used to describe him. These words particularly are symbols, the allude to hell and the fall and Satan himself and angels, and these a lot of foreshadowings going on in all the songs, and so that's just important to keep in mind. And then track 3 is called Domination. Lyrics, wild legions of lust, scream in pain, break the chains around your neck, open wide the gates of hell. Definitely alluding to them being chained to the burning lake in book 2, or book 1, I think it was book 1. And then also Satan like opening the gates of hell. And my domination, the word domination is always capitalized, which I thought was interesting, and so it could show Satan's desire to be powerful, omnipotent, who knows, Satan likes power, so something like that. But then 4, 5, 6, and 9 are based on books 9 and 10, which is when the fall of man happens. 4, 5, and 6 are from the perspective of Satan. 9 was a little bit more vague. It could really fit into the perspective of Adam or Satan. And the lyrics in 4 and 5 are largely based on Satan convincing Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. And 6 briefly talks about Satan convincing Eve. Most of the lyrics in 6 and 9 describe Eve, though, and draw from other books, too. And so track 4 is called The Serpent's Kiss. Some lyrics that are important are the covenant of pure corruption, sink my teeth deep into you, I'm corruption, I'm destruction, and trust in me, for I will set you free. These all are Satan being very sneaky and deceitful in book 9, convincing Eve to eat the forbidden fruit, and corruption is repeated in the song, which is it's important in Paradise Lost. It's an important theme, and it's also important in these songs. And then track 5 is called Paradise Lost. Some lyrics that are important: a stranger in this land, does your conscience betray you, falling from grace, and does hunger pity his prey. These foreshadow the fall of Adam and Eve in book 9 of Paradise Lost. They also are showing Satan's deceit and his intentions to harm Adam and Eve. And then this lyric I feel like is really important. So I've cheated, so I've lied, been the victim of foolish pride. I've begged and I've crawled and I've battled and bled for it all. Now I'll savor the downfall of paradise. This is Satan just like rejoicing that he feels like he's accomplished what he wanted to. So, and then 6 is called Eve of Seduction. The lyrics: it's alright, no need to question, taste the night, just close your eyes and take some bite. All you need to know, all you will know. They appear several times in the song. And on your ear, a whisper also appears. This on your ear, a whisper is particularly important because it alludes to book 4 when Satan was whispering in Eve's ear when she was asleep. And so, yeah. And then 9 is called The Sacrifice. This particular song is a little bit more vague. Eve is being described a lot in this, and so it could be from Adam's perspective, thinking Eve is beautiful, or it could be from Satan's perspective, also thinking Eve is beautiful. And so, also this song talks a lot about blame, which Adam and Eve bickering back and forth about blaming each other. It's all accusation is used in the song also. And it could be Adam blaming Eve for the fall, or Satan blaming God. So, yeah, and then...
Yeah, so the last thing is the scholarly and popular conversations that take place in the context of heavy metal music and Paradise Lost. There really is very little intertextual conversation about heavy metal. There's not really a lot of scholarly work being done in the genre in general, mostly because heavy metal isn't really seen as
like a legitimate art form to most people. If people do talk about heavy metal, they mostly just bash it, or they talk about the culture of heavy metal as a whole. And so that's it.
Cool. Okay, I have 2511.